All righty, welcome everyone. Welcome to today's Missouri Open Door Technology Mod um, webinar. Today's topic is homeownership and the supports to make it successful. We just have some announcements, an overview of Missouri No Wrong Door. We're focused on community living today and adaptations and accommodations for inclusive housing. I don't know that there are any actual announcements, but we will see. First up is Showcase is right around the corner. If you are new, this is the 10th year of the Charting the Life course Showcase. It's an opportunity to gather, reflect on what's happened in the past decade, where the framework is headed, how people are using the tools and framework in their thinking and practice. And explore person-centered niche across the lifespan. So registration is open. We encourage you to register and hope to see you at Showcase. Also, our call for sponsors is open. So if you're interested in sponsoring the Showcase or exhibiting, you can scan the QR code to download the guide and reach out to us if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or would like more information about sponsoring. Missouri No Wrong Door. Its focus and goal, our mission is to transform the way people access services in the community. We do this by supporting individuals and caregivers to make decisions that are based on complete and accurate information about their options. And it's for everyone who's seeking long-term services and supports, regardless of age, income, or disability. We have several partners. Missouri Assistive Technology is on the call with us today. I am Catherine Reagan, and I'm representing the Institute for Human Development, which is Missouri's USED. We also partner with DHSS, Department of Mental Health, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, HealthNet, the Missouri DD Council, Inclusive Housing, and several others listed here. The goal of the Missouri Open Door series is to focus really on the far right triangle, which is those inclusive supports. So rather than creating a barrier between the person, their family, and community, we are looking for those inclusive community supports and services that a person needs to pursue their good life without unintentionally secluding them from their family and community. The technology series focuses on those integrated supports, especially in that technology piece of that integrated support star. When we look at everything that a person has, their personal strengths and assets, relationships, their community-based services, and what they may or may not be eligible for. Today's session focuses on those personal technologies, assistive and adaptive technology, and those environmental technologies that people use to support them in adapting to their surroundings. Because today's focus is housing, that falls in the domain of community living. And that includes housing, transportation, all the things in your community that help you live your good life. And if you are new to Charting the Life course, it is a framework, a way of thinking, and a set of tools to help you think differently about your vision for a good life, and supports for high expectations and integrating multiple types of supports across the lifespan and life domains. Charting the Life course is a way to help you organize your ideas, your vision for a good life, your goals, and problem solve and navigate as you advocate for the supports that you need. And just a little more about community living. I did leave out neighborhood and community, which is a pretty important piece of community living. But it includes where you live, how you live, concepts around universal design, and accessing your community. And then here's a sample community integrated support star for community living. These are available at lifecoursetools.org. We will also make sure you have access to the slides and recording after today's session, making sure that the captions are accurate and you have everything you need. There will be a follow-up email that goes to the email with which you registered for today's webinar. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Scout, who will present the rest of the time.
There we go. All right. Thank you so much, Catherine. I have been diligently doing my admitting job, and I will now pass that off. And I would just like to say thanks everybody for coming. I love seeing all these different names in the participants list. If anybody is here for the first time and wants to throw it in the chat, what brought you, or anything else, feel free. I believe that is up and running for you all. But today I'm going to talk about home ownership and some supports to make it successful. So we can just slip on to the next slide. So the first thing I want to talk about is just some definitions between accessible housing and so we'll start there. So there's an image on the screen of a high-rise building, and this is actually a very accessible apartment building in Columbia, Missouri. And accessible housing is a residential property designed, constructed, or modified so that people with disabilities or older adults can get in and out, can just fully use this facility and live safely and independently. These are all great things that we want for all of us, right? So accessible housing really focuses on physical barriers, making sure those are low or non-existent so that people can access their community. But let's go to the next slide, when we compare that to inclusive housing, and I will say this is an image that is not mine. It is shared from Shelby Butler at Empower Abilities down in Springfield. Inclusive housing really broadens that definition to housing that provides choice, autonomy, and stability. So it goes beyond that physical access, can include home ownership, the location of choice, and lifelong supports. So these are more homes, not necessarily programs or facilities. So that's kind of the intent of inclusive housing. The woman in the picture is pretty excited about her housing. I believe she is somebody that transitioned out of probably a nursing home and into a residential setting of her choosing. All right, let's go to the next slide. So some of the differences between them are, nothing wrong with accessible housing, but still people with disabilities can be isolated or even displaced, when we only focus on accessible housing. So the idea of inclusive housing is really designing around the person, not the building. So there's an image on the screen of a woman coming up a wooden ramp on her scooter. I like this because it's the idea in my mind is that she is somebody who lives out in the country. She is barefoot. She is doing her own thing. And a lot of accessible housing really is in town, in kind of city centers, keeps it on bus routes, but not everybody wants to live in that kind of location. All right, we can go to the next slide. So inclusive housing is one of these, having a place of your own is really one of those markers of adulthood, right? And so, for those of us that go to work every day, many of us, either rent a place or have chosen to buy a home. And these are really some of the markers of adulthood, right? And so having that kind of control over where a person lives can be really important to personhood. And often people with developmental disabilities and other disabilities are really excluded from this experience. And, this goes on to say, home is central to independence, mental health, and belonging. And I will say this presentation was designed around home ownership, but I truly believe that having the housing of your choice is, and feeling ownership of one's place is the important part to me. The mortgage and who we pay that to is less important to me than choosing where a person lives. That's just my view of things. All right, we can move on. So part of the inclusive housing idea is supports that actually make this work. And so some of those supports can include things like in-home care, um, technology, financial coaching, could also include case management, accessible transportation, and home modifications. And those supports can change over time. So that's an important piece as well. And everybody can have different pieces to make their housing work for them. So we'll talk about some of those. So because assistive technology is something that we focus on in this series, so I really want to talk about things like how assistive technology works best. So it works best when we really think about the person as a whole, not just the limitations, not just the skills, and not just the likes, but all those and more, all those combinations that make us who we are. What environment are we going to be in? So for some, it might be an apartment. For some, it might be a house in the city. For some, it might be a place out in the country. Um, and what is the task we're really trying to do? So each of us have different needs for making our home and house successful. So we'll look at some of the options for those. All right, we can go on to the next slide. So today, I'm going to focus on a few areas of supports, including durable medical equipment, smart home technology, assistive and adaptive devices, and then home modifications. And we can go on. So durable medical equipment, also known as DME. So for a lot of folks, this is a very familiar category. We're familiar with walkers and wheelchairs and shower chairs. Um, these are the kind of things that are not super hard to get. Sometimes, especially when it comes to wheelchairs, items can be covered by insurance, which is great. But one of the things that I've learned over time is that a lot of times people go into getting durable medical equipment without all the information. And so, finding out more information about what supports are out there can really make a difference on how well those supports work for you. I'll use a small example of like when you get a wheelchair through insurance. Um, you have to advocate to get lights on that wheelchair. So if you are somebody who goes out at night and you want lights on your chair, you really have to make a case for that. But even something, and I don't know, this may have changed over time, but like a USB port on a wheelchair may be standard now. Like I said, I am unsure. Um, but in the past, you had to advocate to get a USB port put on a power chair that comes with lots of power. But I mean, how limiting would it be, or how expanding would it be? Maybe we'll look at that, to have that port to be able to charge your cell phone so you're never without it. So that advocacy can matter. And the right DME can really make a difference for safety. All right, let's go on to the next one. So durable medical equipment generally does not require a big installation or any modification to the home. The thing I'm going to say here is AT professionals, OTs, lots of folks are out there to help individuals find what is really going to work best. I could go into lots of stories, but you know, for things like a shower chair, there are so many types of shower chairs and transfer benches, and a lot of folks just don't understand the scope. Um, and so working with somebody to help you learn, or doing your own research to help you see what is really going to be the best fit. Um, and, you know, on the other end, we've got a Hoyer lift. You know, that can be covered by insurance. If you're not somebody who likes to charge a battery, then maybe a manual is better than an electric one. You know, just knowing those differences. The chair in the middle of the screen is a kitchen chair. So a lot of folks don't even know that exists, but it's just that high seat to help you do those higher tasks. Um, and then even something really small like a leg lifter can make a huge difference. Just being able to say independently, lift your leg over a tub or independently lift your leg into bed. That could actually be a game changer for someone being able to just be more independent in their home. So I love the large and the small, but we're going to keep going with some other DME. So, you know, there's so many items out there. It's so much more than wheelchairs and walkers. And I want to show a couple of these things. I have two big items and plus a really small item. So the first item on the screen is a Dignity lift. And this is basically a toilet seat, but it is powered. So it's a kind of unusual device in this realm. Everybody's probably seen a 3-in-1 commode. It can be used in a bedroom. It can be used in the, you know, over a toilet. But this powered one is a different kind of option. So with the push of a button on a remote, it lifts you up to a near standing position, just like a lift chair does. And so for some people, it just makes a huge difference. It's a very personal task. People want to be able to do as much as they can by themselves. And on the other side of the screen is a bathtub lift. So that one I really like. Not only have I talked to lots of people who are just like, I just want to take a bath. I don't want to sit down and have, you know, water showered over my head. I want to sit in the water. And so a bath lift is something that can really give folks that, like, this is how I want to live my life. And I think home is all about that, right? Um, and so this, you know, will lower down to 4 inches and can really submerge somebody up to a good height. It powers back up, lifts you up, you just slide out of that. The nice thing about this particular shower lift is that it can also double as a personal lift if somebody falls. So it would require a second person, but you know, you can just use it as a personal lift. But again, if somebody falls, this device could lift a person up as long as they can transfer onto it and get them back into a seated and then standing position. And then the middle one is a Donner, and it is for compression socks, which, you know, over my career, lots of people have come and said, you know, my doctor said I should wear these, but I can't get them on or off, so I just don't. And a simple frame, like is shown in this middle picture, is the compression sock goes over the frame and the foot slips in, and it really makes doing some, you know, getting that compression stocking on a lot more simple. And then there's other devices that can help you get them off. But something as simple as compression socks, which might seem like a really small thing, can sometimes mean the difference between feeling like you can go out in the community and feeling like you just really need to stay home because you get tired or your legs hurt. So all these, anything can be very simple, but some of these simple devices or complex devices can have big impact on how a person lives in their home and community. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, now we're on smart home devices, or else I just had a slide in there twice. So I do want to spend just a minute on smart home devices. Um, I really think this has been a game changer for a lot of folks with a variety of disabilities. But smart home devices really can enhance lives by increasing independence and safety simply through voice control, remote access, and automated routines, um, and probably other ways. But a couple of the highlight things that I think that smart home devices can do are step-by-step instructions for task. So for folks who struggle with going through all the steps of a task, this can really break it down. This can promote independence and even reduce reliance on caregivers, right? Um, um, and smart home devices can be programmed with automated alerts. They can help you contact emergency contacts, really, which can provide huge peace of mind for friends and family. Um, and one of the things, like a lot of people think about Ring cameras and the things they can do, but I think I'll talk about this in routines, or I should. But I like this idea of when somebody comes to the door and rings the door, a smart doorbell, you can start a routine, which can include making your smart device bark like a dog. You don't have to have a dog. You could just have a routine where your device barks like a dog, maybe even twice. Um, you know, and that might make a person feel safer in their home. All right, I'll go on. The smart home devices, there's a quick list. We're not going to go over this, but all kinds of things can be smart. We're going to go to the next slide. Um, there is This is a nice slide from the Pennsylvania AT Foundation that just kind of lists out how these things work. So your device, your wireless protocol, your smartphone or tablet, and internet. So those are the pieces, just kind of an FYI, that go into making a smart device work. Now we'll just slip to the next slide. I have a couple of rooms, and I won't go over all of these, but just like the variety of things that smart devices can do, like control water temperature. For folks who don't have good sensation in their legs or something, but want to take a bath, what a great option to be able to control the water temperature. There are smart toilets or bidets. You can control the lighting in any room. Somebody is writing that the towel warmer is a game changer. Yeah, but all kinds of things that can be added in multiple rooms, but specifically this one's about the bathroom. We're going to look at one more room really quickly, the bedroom. And again, the things that I'm talking about here could be in some different rooms, but I love the idea of a smart device for blinds, especially when I think of somebody with a limiting disability, mobility, or joint issues that. Opening the curtains can be hard, but I mean, we think about what sunlight does for us and how we feel when our house is well lit. Again, just making that house your home. So smart blinds, openers for curtains, smart plugs for lighting, but also routines and alarms. So you can just use a smart device for an alarm, or you can have a whole routine, something like, at 6:30, my alarm goes off, my blinds get opened, I have music play for 10 minutes and then I get my news. Whatever kind of routine you want to make, that can be an option. But the last one on here, I also just want to point out a smart heating pad, or they make electric blankets to be able to warm your bed before you get into it, coming out of some cold nights. that can be nice for anyone, but really a game changer for folks who have a hard time regulating temperature. So all kinds of things that can be done. Okay. I wanted to put this slide in here. I will just run through it quickly. Oh, fine. About routines with an Amazon device. I'm just talking about one. It's really easy to set up routines, and they can be set up for just about anything. So you just go in, click add, and then you set up kind of the cause and effect. And there are so many things that can trigger a routine. So it might be a time. It might be an alert to a camera. I mean, just there are so many options for what triggers a routine. Like in this example, the routine is triggered by saying good morning to your smart speaker, and then you can add in what you want done at that time. When it's triggered by your voice, then of course it can happen at any time, right? So another one is when I say dinner time, so the device will announce around the house, it will turn on the living room lights, and it will play chill music. So, and this is where you could have when my doorbell gets rung, bark like a dog, and turn on an exterior light if it's not on, something like that. All right, anyway, all kinds of routines. But we're going to dive into a little more assistive technology, or things that are more commonly classified as assistive technology, which I had to throw the definition up here, is any item, piece of equipment, software, system that helps people with disabilities or age-related challenges increase, maintain, or improve their functional capabilities. All right. And I can barely get through a presentation without talking about kitchen tools. Kitchens and bathrooms. I don't know. Call me crazy, but that's what I like to talk about. But again, I think some of these, sometimes just these tasks that maybe are not even hard to be done by a caregiver, but if an individual wants to do a task more independently, there's so often a tool out there to help with that. And so some of the things I just put on that we may or may not think about. The first one is an amazing device. It is a robotic feeder. It is a high dollar device, but if you think about somebody who cannot physically feed themselves, but who can, make that choice to take a bite and, do the physical function of chewing and swallowing, a robotic feeder could really be a game changer. And we've seen that here at Missouri Assistive Technology, where we do have one of these robotic feeders available to borrow. So that's a big thing. But even something like a rocker knife, I should have changed the picture here. I have a new favorite rocker knife. But this is a T-grip handle rocker knife it's safe to use, it's easier to grip, it's more ergonomic, it does many things. And if that is the device that helps people chop their own vegetables or, food, what a great little option. The next device is called, it has my favorite name. It's called the Pour Thing, spelled P-O-U-R, because it helps pour large liquid from large containers. So a 2-liter bottle will fit in this one, or a half-gallon jug of like milk or juice. They do make gallon size ones for, gallons of liquid. And it has hinge points halfway up. And so you just push the top, put your glass in an appropriate spot, and you can pour the liquid from the container into a cup. You can keep this in the fridge, open the fridge, pour it into your cup. That way you never even have to lift a jug. But, you know, water dispensers in the fridge pretty much are only good for water, but this you could put any kind of beverage in the pour thing and be able to drink what you want. And the next one is just a hot and cold water sensor. It's a really simple device. But for some people, that's a big issue. Again, it might be a neuropathy, or it might just be fear. I'm afraid I'm going to burn myself if I wash the dishes. And with this, when the water is cold, there's a little like LED light that turns the water blue. When the water is hot, that LED turns the water red. When it's a neutral color, it's actually off, at least in the one we have. But it's a really clear indicator, and it's kind of cool looking, of how this could help someone. All right, let's move on. Again, I could probably talk about kitchen tools all day. We're going to talk a quick minute about reminders. Now, what do reminders have to do with independent living and housing? Think about all the things we do and how many things you keep track of to be able to live in your own home. We have to pay our bills. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to walk the dog, whatever it is that, we all have to do. Sometimes it's easy to keep those things in mind. I have to eat dinner every night. I don't ever forget that one. But for some people, it is difficult to remember certain tasks. So whether it's taking medication, which can be a huge piece of living independently, and there's lots of med planners or med dispensers on the market for that. Simple to more complex. This one on the right side is actually a locking med dispenser that alarms. It's very nice. When you flip it over, when it's time to take medication, there's one hole in the lid and the slot turns itself so that the medication is under that hole. And when you flip it over to dump the medication into your hand, that stops the alarm. It's a pretty clever idea. Somebody may need that. They might need something simpler. They might need something more complex. But I've actually worked with a young woman who the med planner was the only thing she needed to enable her to move out on her own and live independently. In the middle, there is a time timer. So this is a visual timer and can be set. This one goes up to 30 minutes. So it can be set to do things and not get stuck in one task. I want to, I want to do this task. I want to play a game for 30 minutes, but then I need to go make my dinner. And so having that visual timer can be really important for some. And this is just one version. Visual timers are on most of our smartphones. You can get bigger ones, smaller ones, you can get huge ones, and of varying lengths of time as well. So it can be just a really nice support. I always think I should have one when I present so I can see how much time I have left. And then the to-do list. The to-do list is actually kind of funny because I found this. We actually have one exactly like this. I found it on Amazon, and it cost me $7. And it has been wildly popular because it is so simple. And for some folks, that is exactly the need to get the job done. So I never look past the simple devices. It has physical sliders that you slide to see whether you've completed the task. The top ones are showing the check. The bottom ones are showing the X. So those are not done. It's very simple to change out the list. The lines pop out, and it actually comes with papers all set. You can print them or just write in them. But whether you're, putting schoolwork on here or the things you need to do on a daily or monthly basis to maintain your housing is completely up to you. And there's all kinds of checklists. You can, again, have an app. You could use a whiteboard. There's just a million ways to have a list like this. All right. I think I have one more. Yeah. Oh, it looks like I lost a picture. All right. So communication is the next one. And I think obviously communication is important for many or all of us. And there's lots of support out there for folks who don't have good verbal communication. But I wanted to take a moment to talk about the variety of options out there. On the far right is a dynamic display augmentative alternative communication device. It means there's multiple screens. You hit people and you can program this, and it goes into just tons of stuff. It enables the most possible communication right now. I mean, AI might be changing this, but that's another topic. But right now, this is the kind of the high-end communication device. But for some folks, communication gets difficult. Maybe folks that have verbal communication might struggle in certain situations. And so really keeping open to those possibilities of a kind of a lower tech options, whether even if they're apps or communication cards, or even the bottom is a Big Mac, which is a recordable device. So you just hit it and it plays a message. Please call back later. David is putting in the chat about next month's mod will be on AI. Yeah, but I think to remind all of us that if we are supporting folks who sometimes lose communication, that there are options out there for them as well. Whether it's aphasia and communication is difficult in the evening, or just, anxiety makes things difficult. Just not to forget, there is a full spectrum, and we all need to be able to communicate to basically maintain our housing situations. All right, let's move on. Oops. I have for occasional or full-time support. The variety of communication tools are vast. All right. Well, thanks for that. All right, we're now going to just go into our last section, which is home modifications, right? So ideally the home environment will just work perfectly with residents. I think there's one more section here. But of course, that is not always the case. Those of us who live in areas with older housing stock, which is at this point, quite frankly, probably most of us, have probably experienced narrow doorways and many steps and all kinds of things. All right, so let's look. Oh, I put this in. This is a lot of wording that basically says our buildings and lots of our systems are designed for this kind of what we're going to put in quotes normal way of doing things. But these buildings that we build, these systems that we build, often create barriers for people with a variety of disabilities. who may just do things a little differently, right? So this idea of the social model makes it is not the disability that is limiting, right? So probably many of you have heard this, um, but it is the environment, um, the attitudes, and basically the pieces of society that are limiting that an individual with a difference or disability. Um, so the problem is not located in the individual, but with society, its economy, and culture, which fails to deliver a built environment capable of meeting the needs of people with impairments. It is just kind of turning on the head the idea that, it is the person with the limitation who kind of has the issue, but really it is maybe just the standard way of doing things. All right, we can move on from that one. Let's talk about entryway access, right? So housing is great. There's 1,000 things. But if you can't get in or out, you're kind of done. So lots of houses have a step or two. Not everybody needs a ramp. But lots of folks, can benefit from ramps. So I am showing a variety here, which I think are some maybe less utilized, like the threshold ramps are really nice. The first image shows a single step and then probably like a 6 or 8 foot porch and then another single step into the door. And instead of building something large or purchasing something big, just 2 little threshold ramps, which are probably $100 a piece or somewhere along there, really can optimize that for a lot of folks. Great when you want to, if you have a setup like this, when you want to have visitors and they might use mobility devices, then you can just have anybody get in and out of your house or yourself. The middle picture is a modular ramp. So a lot of times when we think about ramps, we think about, oh, who's going to build this? And we think about wooden ramps. But a modular ramp is a great option, especially for people who are renting. And because it can be picked up and moved. I mean, I've done this. Where you can have a 20-foot ramp and then you move someplace else and you need 25 feet. So as long as you go back to that same company, you can add components and reuse that. With a wooden ramp, you really cannot. You might be able to unscrew and use some deck boards, but that, is about it. Almost not worth the time and effort. Track ramps are something I like to point out because not everybody knows they exist. But there are suitcase ramps, which are whole wide ramps that can be put down and picked up. But track ramps, obviously just for somebody using a wheelchair, you wouldn't want to walk on these. Where they're really easy. A suitcase ramp can be really heavy and hard to move around. Where track ramps, they telescope, so they're easy to pick up and put down. All you have to do is place them as wide as the wheels, and you're pretty much good to go. So just a nice option. And you can space them where, hopefully a person who's ambulatory can walk around them and not feel like they have to walk, down them. And then I really do like this last picture, which is just a plastic or appearing plastic curb ramp that's all it does. It's a small triangle that allows a wheelchair to get up onto that, up or down onto that curb. I like this because I think the idea is you could get strong material and 3D print something like that for a particular curb height. I just think like that whole disruption is very cool. You could use a threshold ramp or you could just 3D print one. All right. Let's go on. I think I have another. I think I went a little overboard with doorways for a particular reason. So internal doors. Um, I think one of the things that we don't think about maybe often enough is a barn door. Um, the first image is of a barn door, so it has a sliding bracket at the top. Um, and not only can these be super easy to swing open and closed, and you can use any hardware you want on them, but they also take away that door swing option. So when you have a standard door hinged on the side, kind of like the second picture, you have that big door swing. So you have to get out of the way of that. You have to account for that. With a barn door, that goes away. You know, I have seen folks who put up a rack and just use a curtain. Very similar. Barn door gives you a little bit, or this style of door gives you a little bit more privacy, which is nice. The middle image is of French doors, which can make things easier. They can swing both ways. You know, just a way to think about having a door that doesn't have that full door swing. Or something like this last image, which is an expandable door hinge. So this would go in place of a standard door hinge. And what this, I don't know, extended L bracket kind of does is when you open the door, it puts the door behind the frame. It just tucks the door back further so you don't have the width of the door, not the I don't know, just the width of that door, which is, you know, about 2 inches. It gives you that space. So if that's all you need, then that's all you need. Um, and that is some ways to do things simply. I have one more that I've recently added because door openers. I think door openers they can be a game changer, especially for folks using mobility devices. I just recently learned about the Hero door opener. I like this. It is a high quality door opener. Backed by a team of folks who care a lot about their opener. And on the other picture is a Dorma door opener, which is a, you know, long time brand, great door opener. The price difference is dramatic, I will say, for these openers. But what a door opener can do is really be a game changer for families and for individuals who struggle to get in and out of doors. So they are kind of a higher end option, but there's so many things. I for one of my coworkers, for his door closer, I gave him a dressing stick because he was struggling to close the door. So getting the job done is clearly the most important thing, but knowing how many options are out there is also really important. All right, let's go on to, I did throw in some kitchen things for home modification. The thing I like about this first image is an oven with a side opening door. And I think this is maybe fairly obvious that this is a great modification in the home modification for somebody who's using a wheelchair, because the fold down kind of standard oven door. Then for somebody using a wheelchair, you've got that door, you've got your knees, and you're trying to reach across both. But also for individuals who are intimidated using their kitchen. They're afraid to get burnt. This can put you in a position to feel more confident taking things in and out. If you have vision loss, it can put you in a place that can feel more confident getting your dishes dishes in and out of the oven. And so just this little change I will say there are French door ovens, but I don't know anybody who can really afford those. Those start in the thousands of dollars. A side hinged oven does not. You can get things like pull down racks. Of course, you can always just use lower cabinets if you don't have reach to go up to the top. But if you want to access all your cabinets and you don't have reach, what a great option to have a pull down shelf. Also pull out. You can get drawers instead of cabinets, which gives you access to the whole depth of your cabinet, and it can all come out instead of digging back in there. Or you can add a device that makes it pull out. Those are very nice and can really be super helpful. Again, not just mobility, but all kinds of reasons. And then something as simple as a oh, we're almost out of time. As a self-detecting or automatic faucet. Okay, sorry, I've talked too much. Let's keep going. Okay, we've already talked about that. Great things for the bathroom, bidets, bidets, bidets for days, right? Okay, I love this middle shower head because it is actually a grab bar. So the shower head can go up and down on that grab bar. Kind of cool. Same thing with the toilet paper rack. I've never seen a toilet paper holder that is also a grab bar. Here's one. Pretty cool. They exist. All right. Yep, great products. I have to throw in a plug because we're talking about environmental adaptations for Sarah Hendren's What Can a Body Do? How We Meet the Built World. If you haven't read it, it's an awesome read, but let's go on. All right. Let's hit that next button. All right, the thing to let's hit it again. I think there's more words. Yeah, and maybe one more. Oh, okay. This slide just says it's all about you, right? The right supports are really the ones that meet an individual's needs. And now the shameless plug is if you don't know what you need, we are here to help, as are many OTs, PTs, SLPs, and every other professional on the call. That is what is important and makes housing work, is finding the right supports. All right, I'm done, and I'll hand it back over to Catherine. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scout. We are close to the end of our time, so if there are questions or reflections, I invite you all to come off mute. But before you do that, there was a question in the chat, Scout, about do you recommend using Lifeline services through FCC? I was not equipped to answer that question, so I wanted to make sure that did get answered before we went broad, if there was an opinion.
I will unmute. I think Lifeline and those kind of emergency alerting devices are great. If you're talking about the personal emergency response, the Apple Watches are becoming very popular for those services. All kinds of products are out there. They change frequently. So it's just trying to keep up with all those options, and check what's on the market currently and look at reviews, I think, and features. And I'm happy to help folks look through those as well. Oh, yep. Thanks for putting, somebody asked about the book. It really is. It's a great book. It's one of those books, when I finished it, I wanted to go back and start it again. All right. All right. Yeah, so it looks like we've answered the questions in the chat, unless anybody has anything else. Okay. All right. Our upcoming events. Catherine, you're muted, so I will say these are our upcoming, or IHD's upcoming events.
The next benefits mod is March 11th. And that topic will be Medicaid spend downs. And as David already pointed out, March 25th will be the next technology series mod, and that is on AI and those questions that we are asking, not sure what we want to ask and what we might want to know. Yes, Jane, the PowerPoint will be available after, along with the recording. You'll get an email to the address with which you registered.
All right.
And I think that is pretty much it. There's Angelina is usually on these calls, so her contact information is here as well as Scout's. There will be a survey that opens up when this ends. It'll open up in your browser. If you have questions, we're around for the next 5 minutes or so and are happy to answer those.
Thanks everybody for coming.